Okay, so welcome back to the channel. Got an update for you on this VF1 Haas that we're working on. So the gearbox was noisy before, so we decided to take it back off and have one more look at it. Now, there was a couple of reasons that I decided to take it off and have another look. And the first reason was because I wanted to go speak to an engineering company local to me that specialises in gear cutting and grinding. And I showed them the gear set to find out prices about having the gear set remade. Could they do it, etc, etc. So I took the high-low assembly apart, the main shaft and the main gear apart, measured the teeth, measured the shafts, the diameters, all the details, and took them down there to show them to see if it could be remade. They gave me an estimated price to see if it could, so it's something I'm going to bear in mind for the future. We also tested the hardness of the gears on a hardness tester, just to see what they were like, and anyone who's interested, they were around 48 Rockwell C. So obviously if you make a gear too soft, it will chew up. If you make it too hard, it will chip and break. So you need to get it in the right sort of area. So that's something I'm going to look at in the future. Whilst the gears were apart, and I had the box stripped down again, I put all the gears, I went through all the gears again. So you've got the shaft, the 40 tooth gear on the actual, this part of the shaft. You've got, this one's an 81 tooth gear that goes on the main shaft. Then you've got the 40 tooth gear on the high-low and the 81 on the high-low. And I went through the whole lot of them, and I used a bench top double-ended grinding wheel, but they had abrasive, like impregnated bristle, flappy bristle brushes on them to just clean up the gears a little bit more, to see if it made any difference on the noise. We already know, sorry about that, we already know that the gearbox is noisy. It's not going to have made a massive difference at all, but whilst I was there, I just gave it a little bit more effort to clean up those edges on the high-low gear. Maybe it will make it quieter, but I don't think so, because now it's built up, you can hear that it's noisy still anyway. Maybe it is better, I can't tell, but I don't think it's going to be. So anyway, we've got the pulley back on. I changed the soft tube that I had to a more rigid tube to come up here, because remember we had the oil line was kinking, and this is just something I had laying around, so I've used this. I found a split in one of the high-low gear switches, which I think was caused by myself. I nipped the cable here before on this, so what I've done this time, I've actually cut this away, which I think Haas should have done initially, because that comes straight down. And basically, the tube line's all right, the hard line's never going to be an issue, but where the cable is for the high-low switches, they get very close there. So I've actually cut this and notched it out, so that's never going to be an issue, because I nicked the switch here, and there's nothing wrong with the switch except I nicked the cable, so it wasn't worth leaving it, because even if I keep this machine as just a test mule for myself, I wanted to sort that. So I've notched that out of there. That's done, sealed it back up, pretty much ready to go. We've just got to put the motor back onto it. Now I was going to look at running up the other gearbox that I bought. I showed you before, we got a gearbox off a VF3 1996. It's an earlier iteration of gearbox, so it's slightly different. The bad news is I broke the casting of the gearbox just because I missed something that was obvious after the fact that I just did not see and was blind to whilst I was taking it apart, and I'll show you what that is now. So with these gearboxes, this is the only type I've done. I've stripped this one twice now, and the exact same gearbox is in there that I've stripped and rebuilt once. So the bit that caused me the issue, so this is your main gearbox casting. This billet machined plate here that runs along here and comes around the side of the air cylinder, that's basically the sump for the gearbox oil that drains through the drop tube, because obviously this is all upside down, drains out here into the tank before being pumped up again and the oil circulating. Now this billet machined plate, which is the sump, the corner here is cut out to go around the air cylinder. The air cylinder bolts direct to the casting, and the air cylinder shaft goes through the casting with a little rubber seal. Now, on this older style gearbox case, The billet plate sits on here, your air cylinder sits here, and your shaft goes through there like so. Now the reason I broke it, or how I managed to make the mistake of breaking the casting, is, let me just go through there and, sorry, just trying to move the mic there. When I stripped it all down, I pressed the pulley off, I done all that side of it with no issues. The issue came when I couldn't get this shaft out of the gearbox. So what was happening was, I had this shaft in here and I couldn't push it out. On this gearbox, you just push that shaft all the way through and it comes out as part of the high-low gear assembly. This stuff hasn't been cleaned up, so there's the high-low gear assembly. This shaft, that goes in there, and when that shaft there sticks up through here, and you just push it out and it comes out. No dramas at all. Now, the issue was, that doesn't happen on this gearbox. It can't happen on this gearbox, because what this shaft has, it has this large washer that sits on here, and it has two circlips that hold that washer there. And that washer basically stops the gear from going too far out, the shaft with the gears on it from going too far out and too far back. Now, when I couldn't get, I unscrewed the nut off of here and got the gear set out of the way. I stripped everything else off, so all I was left with was this shaft in there that I couldn't get out. So I decided to put it in the press and just pressed on here ever so lightly to see if I could push it through, exactly like you do on that one. And what happened was, I broke the casting. Because when I pushed it through, I bust off the front of the casting here. Now, immediately after that happening, I realised something else, is that, as I just said, on this one, this billet plate has cut out this corner. The cylinder mounts direct to here. On this one, the cylinder covers the whole base, and the billet plate covers the whole base, and the air cylinder mounts on top of it. So what was happening was, with that in there, if I'd have just, all the pulleys were removed, so if I'd have just undone 5 bolts, took that off, this, along with the washer that was in there, would have just come out. That's it, job done. I didn't realise, I just didn't see, like completely blind to the fact that this bit was there, that was what was stopping it coming in. I thought maybe something was burred or caught and it just needed a gentle push to get it out. Whereas actually this come off and it comes out from this direction. So you have to disconnect it from here, which you don't have to do on that. So it was a lesson learned. So obviously when I pressed on it, I pressed through here, and the washer that was on the shaft in here actually bust through the case, because the top part of the casting was only the diameter of that. And the big part of the casting in there was the right size for the washer, which is now all bent out of shape because I squished it. So I broke the casting. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to machine a pocket out of here, then machine an insert to match that I'll rebore. Then I can rebore this section because I'll cut across in here a bit. So I'll rebore both of these in position back to the OEM size, and I'll have a bit that maybe has a side tab to screw it in to make sure it never comes out, because I don't want to do too much of a press fit. But I'll make it a snug fit, and also I'll mill something out where it's got like counterboard screws or something like that, so it all sits nice and flush. So it can be repaired. It's just, you know, when you do something and straight away when you've broken it, you realise what you've done and why you done it, in the sense of what you missed. So yeah, I was kind of kicking myself with that, and it kind of ruined my afternoon, thinking if I'd have just left the bearings as they were and not been so finicky, I could have just put that gearbox in and it would have been no dramas. But I've learned, what happens now and how you get that part of it off, which should have, you know, if someone else had looked after your shoulder, you know, sometimes you've got a problem and someone else comes and goes, oh, you know, you just undo that. But you've been looking at it for ages and you couldn't see the issue, and someone just wallop straight away tells you what to do. Now, that's kind of what I needed, but on my own here. I do have my landlord working next door, but he wasn't around at the time, so there was nobody looking over my shoulder to point out the obvious that was staring me right in the face before I made that fatal mistake to press on it and break the casting. But now I've learned there's differences between the two gearboxes. I also had a measure up of a few bits, and them gears cannot go in that casting. That casting cannot, them gears cannot go in that casting. The parts are not interchangeable. The shafts are different. This has got a washer and a groove and a circlip. The lengths are different. The bottom plates are different. So, excuse me, they're not interchangeable, basically. So I broke the casting, but I've learnt a bit in the meantime. So every day's a school day. So we're going to get this back in the machine. Yes, it's still going to be noisy, but I've measured and looked at what I wanted and got quotes on prices for gears. So the task that I wanted to strip that back down for is done. Now, we're going to put the gearbox back in the machine, we're going to run it back up, and we're also going to look at a little bit more into this X phasing error. Some of you guys have given me suggestions of what to try. I pretty much think I'd already tried everything you guys have suggested. So I'm still none the wiser of why that is giving me an X phasing error. But I'm going to look into it some more, and we're going to put this machine back together so it's running. And then I've got different ball screws I can try regards to noise. I've got the X-axis, the Y-axis and a Z-axis on a VF0 and a VF1 are all the same length. So X, Y and Z are the same ball screw. When you get to a VF0E or a VF2, the Y-axis is the same as the X. So I've got two, and the Z is the same. So I've got two spare ball screws that are used and probably worn. Not sure if they're noisy, I won't know till I try them, but I've got two sat up there that I can just try to see if it eliminates the noise. But we're going to do that at a later date. I basically want this machine up and running because we've got another one coming, which is a VF0 non-gearbox machine which had electrical board issues, and it may again be a scrap machine for parts, or it may be something I can fix up, but I don't want this one sitting in bits any longer. I want to put it back together, and we're going to have a move around. So that's the update on the VF1. We're going to put the noisy gearbox back in because I might end up keeping this machine as a bit of a test mule for myself. I'd like to look into offering a service for servo amplifier repairs and vector drive repairs, and even offer the service to other people for gearbox overhauls. So if you've got a gearbox that's playing up and it's not something you want to tackle yourself, I haven't worked out prices and charges yet, but you could potentially send me your gearbox. You could take the motor off the top because I wouldn't need the motor or the oil set up. I can use the one I've got here, but I'd strip the gearbox, replace the bearings, replace all the seals. Possibly in the future, depending if testing was to go well, if I even go ahead with it, possibly replace gear sets, but that will be very cost dependent obviously. And then basically I can get your gearbox, bearings, seals, everything like that, put it onto my machine, check it, send you a video of it running, and then crate it all up and send it back to you. So that's something I might look at doing if there's enough interest in it. Not too sure, because not many people want to tackle the gearbox side of it. Yes, you'd have to remove it and you'd have to refit it, but if you don't want to do stripping it down, then maybe I could do that for you. But we'll see. If you're interested in something like that, then get in touch. Also, if you're interested, where I'm buying a few of these machines, I've got spare servo amplifiers, I've got vector drives, I've got tool changer carousels, I've got tool changer motors, all used parts. So I'm starting to stock and have quite a few used parts from these machines. So if there's anything you need, just give me a try because I may have it. But yeah, that's the update for now. I'm gonna get the gearbox back onto the machine and then I'm gonna power it up, and on the same video, stay with me, and then I'll show you, put the camera down now, and I'll bring you back shortly, which will be in a few hours when it's all back together, and we'll see if cleaning up them gears anymore made it any quieter. Probably not, but I'll show you in a second. So be right back. Okay, so we've got the gearbox back on the machine. I've just plugged it in, so we're going to power it up and see what happens. Well, I say see what happens, this is not new. We just put the gearbox back in, obviously after taking it apart to measure it. So there's not going to be much changed, I wouldn't have thought. As said, I found the older worn-in belts that I put in rather than the ones that I cut wavy that seem to rub and make a noise. So for the minutes, I've put the original belts back in. Right, so we turn it on. We've still got the X phasing error, which we know about. So we get rid of that, and let's, everything looks okay. So we power up, restart, see what happens. Gear changed, so that's good. It says spindle in low gear. Right, and this is the thing I talked about in the previous video. X servo error, too large, too much load or speed on an X-axis motor. Difference between motor position and the commanded position has exceeded a parameter. The motor may also be stalled, disconnected, or the driver failed. Servos will be turned off. A reset must be done to restart. This alarm can be caused by problems with the driver, the motor, or the slide being run into a mechanical stop. Now, the X is all the way over, but it's not on a mechanical stop. You can see there I can turn that, that's free. It's not bound up anywhere. Someone mentioned about the switch, but the switch literally looks brand spanking new. So I'm not sure about a switch issue. And if we look at the drives in the back, I know it's not a complete given, but you see they've all got a green light turned on, even the fourth axis, which is not plugged in. There's no fault light on the Vector drive or anything like that. Everything seems good. And I've used the multimeter and checked the voltages and everything to all the axes, even though X is the only one with a problem. And as far as I can tell, everything on that side of it is good. So let's just reset that again, and we'll carry on our power up restart. And it's just done its gear change from high to low this time round, and see, this time round it's moving. Nothing's binding up. I know the screw's a bit worn, but maybe changing the screw will make a difference. Right, so we're done there. Just going to jog the X back into the middle. All that's okay. Right. Right, so everything's there good. Let's just jog it down a bit. Right, so I don't know why I'm even worrying too much, but let's just MDI at 500 RPM. To be fair, that actually sounds a bit quieter than it did before. If I can still hear a bit of noise, but not as much. But again, that is 500 RPM. S. Let's do 800. Again, it definitely seems quieter so far. And the max in the low gear is set to 1201, so let's go 1200. Okay, so we've still got the gearbox noise, which obviously we knew we were going to have, but it seems that polishing the gears up a bit has definitely made a difference. Can still hear them. Didn't expect it to go away, because that's not why I took it apart for, but hopefully you'll get good sound on that to be able to hear what's what. But I'd say that is definitely quieter than it was before. Which is good, because that gearbox is not going to be changed again. Now I broke the other one. So let's just go to 2500, which is going to put us into high gear. So lovely gear change, nice and quiet. $5,000. I haven't warmed it up properly yet, but I just want to put it on video. So let's go S5000. Considering the cover's off and everything like that, that sounds pretty good. And we'll go to 6500. This is a 7500 RPM spindle, but I must admit, on all my machines, I almost stick to 6500 as a limit. I don't know why, I just don't like it to be at its limit all the time. And yeah, with the cover off, that sounds really good. So let's quickly drop that down again, because I haven't warmed it up. And let's go back down to our low gear. So as before, it's changing good. High, low still working as it did before, and we're actually a little bit quieter than we were before. So that's the update. I'm now going to concentrate on this X-axis problem, and I don't know whether it's going to be something to do with the motors and drives, which I've already changed, so I don't think it will be, or if it's going to be to do with that ball screw. But as said, I've got spare ball screws, so I might change the ball screw, the coupler. I've got another coupler here. You see this one is pretty much brand new. It is straight, and although it's not really going to make much difference, that one did seem to have a slight kink in it. Well, it's not, just sort of comes down and steps over a little bit. It's not bent up, but I don't know. I'll probably change the ball screw. I'll put a used bearing pack in there just because, you know, just see if it makes a difference. So we'll change the bearing, the screw, the bearing and the coupler for a different one, and we'll try there. So yeah, update on the gearbox. We broke one, we need to fix it. We put this one back in, we made it a little bit better, and that will do for now. Not the most exciting update, but hey, it's a video, and hopefully you enjoy watching it like I enjoy making it. So we'll see you again soon on the next one.